Hello there, back again with Kania, and following my previous video about the role of norms in code switching and code mixing among Indonesian bilingual influencers. I find so many questions in the comment sections, and today, in this video, I would like to answer 5 of the questions that I already chose. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first question is, you mentioned mode as part of a register shaping norms, but how the mode like speaking face-to-face, texting, or making videos might change how people switch or mix languages. Okay, to remind you, I will mention what does it mean by mode. So mode refers to the channel of communication, and it directly affects the way people use language, including code switching and code mixing. And in this case of YouTube videos made by those influencers, the mode is spoken, proposed for performances, and maybe semi-scripted. And as it meant to feel casual and conversational, because they're doing podcasts, this encourages more relaxed use of language. So that's why code switching and code mixing often occurs in their conversation, because they want to make it sound more trendy, global, or even more expressive, especially for the influencers themselves. And this also can be affected because they posted the content in a global platform, which is YouTube. So actually we cannot separate the mode itself because it relates to other aspect of register, which is who is involved in the conversation. So if we're talking about other modes like face-to-face conversation and texting, the language choices also depend on the context and on the participants that is involved in the conversation. So yeah, actually at the end, every mode of conversation is also related to the participants of the conversation itself. Okay, so the next question is, do you think norms around code switching and code mixing are changing over time, especially with new forms of communication like social media? If so, how? Okay, so yes, I believe that the norms are definitely evolving in this code switching and code mixing thingy, especially with the rise of social media, because in the past, switching languages might seem as inappropriate in the formal settings, but these days, as the social media influences the use of language, especially around younger people, I see some changes in modes or methods in our conversation. So I regularly see people use code mixing even in formal conversation. So yeah, I think norms around code switching and code mixing are changing over time because there are so many factors affecting our language, since our languages are dynamics. So the next question is, if you were to conduct a follow-up study on code switching and code mixing among bilingual influencers, what other factors would you investigate and why? Okay, so if I will conduct a follow-up study about code switching and code mixing among bilingual influencers, I would be interested in exploring the audience's perception on this bilingual influences, especially for those who use code switching so often. Like, do their followers see them as credible, trendy or modern, or rather they think that this kind of language switching is arrogant or less Indonesian? Like, do they do it because they want to seem more Western or what? And maybe I also want to know that if each social media platforms affect the language use Like, does influencers in TikTok use different different kind of language uses compared to YouTube? I think this kind of study will be interesting. The next is, in contexts where bilingual influencers interact with Indonesian followers, how do they adjust their language strategy and what norms guide these adjustments? Okay, from what I see, when bilingual influencers interact with dominant Indonesian audiences, they tend to adapt their language by limiting the use of code switching and use code mixing instead. And they also will use some words and phrases that are commonly used or already familiar to their followers, and this will guide to the purpose that the clearance of the message. So they want to deliver the message more clear and accessible rather than just focusing on their influences as expressiveness. And also by doing this, influencer can maintain the balance between global and local identity. So they do not dump their real identity as the Indonesian. And the last is, why is it important for speakers to be aware of the norms of the audience when code switching or mixing? Okay, so being aware of audience norms is essential because language is not about expressing ideas. It's about connecting with others, and it's about building relationship. So code switching or code mixing without considering the audience's norms can result confusion, misunderstanding, or even affect a bad impression. Like, for example, if an influencer switches too often into English while their audiences mostly understand Indonesian, they might feel uninterested or even disconnected. And in the case of Nessie and Maddie, they show high awareness to these norms because they switch and mix in a way that feel natural and appropriate, and they use common words, familiar words that I think everyone have already known the meaning of the words or phrases translated to Indonesia. So it's great to see that they use the good strategy and methods in their code switching and code mixing. So this is the end of the video. Thank you so much for sending me the questions. I'm really glad to answer those questions because it really increased my understanding, the way of thinking. I hope my answers will also increase our insights together. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.